This episode of Profiles in Risk is sponsored by IA Path, unlocking your adjusting superpowers. Go to iapath.com.
This is Profiles in Risk. Hosted by Nick Lamparelli. Every week, we interview those who risk life, limb, fortunes, career, and reputation, and those who work behind the scenes who look to protect and enlighten us about risk. You can find the show notes and other insurance-related content at insnerds.com. That's insnerds.com. Now, on to the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Profiles in Risk. I'm your host, Nick Lamparelli. Today, I am pleased to introduce Patrick West. Pat is the founder and managing partner of Hedge Quote. Hedge Quote is the starting line for business insurance shoppers that demand fast, simple insurance quotes without the hassle. Using Hedge Quote simply means you'll spend less time looking for the right insurance policy. Pat, welcome to Profiles in Risk.
Thanks, Nick. It's great to be here. Really excited that you have me on.
Same. As I mentioned in our pre-call, as I researched Hedge Quote, I looked you up, did the research. I quite honestly did not understand what it was that you're doing. And then the more I dug in, the more curious I got. This is very new. And so I want to start off by giving you the forum to explain in your words, what is Hedge Quote?
Definitely. Well, again, excited to be here and just a big fan of everything you guys are doing. But
appreciate that.
So diving into Hedge Quote, the goal for me, I have a 15-year background in the insurance industry. I started as a Northwestern Mutual rep right after baseball abruptly ended for me, and actually spent some time in digital advertising and marketing, and also worked at State Farm and then as a broker, both on the personal line side and the commercial line side. So I went through a lot of the different training programs. I sold a lot of different policies and interacted with different consumers, really across a lot of the different spectrums of the insurance industry. And, the one thing I consistently came back to and found was when you just want to shop for insurance, most of the time people are kind of interested in one of two questions, right? The obvious one is the price, right? Am I paying too much? But the second part of it is a little more interesting, right? It's something where am I overinsured? Am I underinsured? There's that kind of segment that has a deeper question, if you will, about their policy. And so for me, when I designed Hedge Quote and kind of set out, the goal was pretty simple. I just wanted to have almost a TrueCar model, if you will, where you're going to get those quotes up front. As you know, and I think a lot of industry people know, in order to get a quote, most of the time you're getting on the phone, you're going through probably a 10, 15-minute phone call. And the results of that are really kind of up in the air. So there's a lot of opportunity cost there. It's unknown. And, if you go through that first 15-minute call and it's not going to work, you're kind of in a position where you have to go and do it again. So what I wanted to do is create a process to kind of reverse that, if you will, and said, hey, can I just take a look at what I'll be paying, what the coverages look like, and some recommendations from a licensed pro before I get into that whole sales model, if you want to call it that, the sales cycle. A lot like, can you just tell me what this Accord is going to cost before I get to the dealership so that I know it's worth my drive over there? The big thing that we wanted to focus on with Hedge Quote was, again, get those quotes up front, but then kind of counteract that feeling where the agent felt maybe I'm out of the equation or out of the conversation, so that when someone actually showed up and was taking time on the phone with them, they knew the quotes, they knew kind of what the price was. So their questions, if you will, were a lot more detailed, and they wanted to know, more closing questions versus, hey, am I going to go through 15 minutes here and it's just not going to work for either of us? So the goal was to create a place where you could get easy quotes kind of without the hassle in the sales pitch. And also to really make sure that agent broker relationship was solid as well, to say, look, when someone is ready to talk to you, it's going to be worth your time. It's going to be something that is going to be specific and hopefully end up in a sale. So there was multiple levels to it. And really a lot of it was just based on what I experienced as a consumer and then also knowing the dynamics of the industry and how it worked, trying to say, hey, look, nobody's right, nobody's wrong. The reality is we all just have to kind of connect at a different level. And I think consumers are at that point where they're informed enough, they know how to research enough. If you just give them the few details on the front end to let them analyze those last couple of pieces, even at a broker agent level, you're just going to have better conversations once you're on the phone with somebody. So set out to build an engine that accomplished those goals. And again, that relationship, I think, is the key part, right? We're not trying to say agents are bad and brokers are bad. And, we're certainly not saying consumers, hey, the only thing that should matter is price. It's trying to just meet at an even space where everybody feels comfortable and moving the relationship from that point, as opposed to a kind of combative level, which I think unfortunately, it happens more times than not.
But to be clear, you're neither an agent nor a broker, right?
Exactly. And that was something that I looked at early on. And I think there's two emerging, I guess, ways to shop for insurance, if you will. And on the InsurTech side of things, there's digital brokers. And I consider what we do a digital shopper, more of a front end research tool than actual sales cycle purchase process tool, if you will. So we're not agents. I have an insurance license, but we don't look to give recommendations. We certainly don't look to obviously make any policy transactions, but we look to be that first point of contact where the agent is, anytime a quote's provided, it's an insurance agent that's licensed that's providing that. So we're really just providing that environment, that ecosystem where they can gather and organize the quotes. The consumer can communicate back and forth with the agent and ultimately try to build trust more on here's the information I need. Can I get that level versus having a conversation that's maybe more personal?
I'm assuming you're not doing this for charity. So how does Hedge Quote get paid?
Right now, because we're a startup and I always make the connection that, we're the startup that you would root for if you knew the dynamics, right? We had the right ideas. We feel like we're coming along at the right time, but, I had to leave insurance to make this work. There was lots of sacrifices that came with it. And even with that said, we're a startup. And so right now, the way that I'm getting paid is success stories. I have people just on a personal level ask me, like I mentioned earlier, 5-10 times a week, hey, am I paying too much? Can you take a look at what we're doing? But in the long run, obviously we want to build a model that's probably very relatable to, a lead generation type of thing. So flat fee type of model in the long run. But because we're a startup, we're just looking for those success stories, looking to build relationships across the country because, being a digital platform, we never really know where somebody's going to come from. But what we really want to be able to do is connect them with a good broker or an agent, or in a lot of circumstances, it can even be some of the new digital platforms that are out there. So right now, total startup, looking for success stories. And then in the long run, once we can, show value, quantify that value with our partners, insurance people are great. They're very giving, and I think they're very trustworthy people, no matter what anybody else says. So if you can show them value, you can create success for them. I have a lot of trust in people to, be able to create something that in the long run is valuable for everybody.
You said that you were licensed as an agent. Do you think that when you ultimately get to, whether it's a lead generation or some kind of flat fee, that there'll be any kind of regulatory aspect to it? Do you think like you guys will need to be licensed? Do you think employees that are working for you will need to be licensed? Do you have any idea of how what the regulatory aspect of Hedge Quote will be once you begin settling on a business model?
Yeah, and absolutely. And I think that, from day one, making sure that things like rebating weren't there, really making sure that at no point there were recommendations as far as this is the coverage you need, really being a connector between the agent and the consumer has and will continue to be the goal. And I always relate what we do and quite honestly, the inspiration behind a lot of this is, the part-time telemarketer that a lot of agencies used to hire. I started actually, when I was with State Farm, I started out at a really close friend of mine's office, basically setting life insurance meetings. So he had a stack of numbers, set those appointments, and obviously conducted meetings from there. But the real value that came from all of that was just that initial push of, here's the people we need to call and set appointments with. And so the model that I want to create, and obviously what I was inspired by, is that non-licensed telemarketer that wasn't there to give policy recommendations, to convince you to up your coverages or anything like that. Their single goal was to introduce you to the licensed insurance agent and to set those meetings. So again, on an inspiration level, and then certainly on a directional level, we always want to remain on the research side of things, where it's a connection point. It's certainly not a place where you come and say, hey, Pat, what's the ideal coverage for this type of car? That's not what we want to be. We want to be consumer focused on, here's the right place to find the right policy. And I ultimately always believe in and will have to focus on making sure that person's a licensed insurance professional.
When a customer comes through your system, and let's say you have a success story, they get placed, save money and get good coverage, all of that. Do you lose the ability to, because the servicing is being done by the agent, do you lose the ability to get access to that customer again? Like what happens at renewal time? Or is it really up to that customer to say, okay, I've been with my agent, and let's go through this again. Let's see if I'm still purchasing the right insurance for me.
Right. So each year I've always believed in the annual review process. And so, making sure that was part of what we did at Hedge Quote was important, but also critical for the long run aspects. You certainly don't want to help somebody and then really have them disappear, especially in the insurance marketplace, because things change so quickly. Even my personal life, and everybody says that, but it is the truth, right? Things change so quickly that an annual review is almost a necessity if you're serious about making sure you have the right coverage. So through the channels that we have, we want to make sure that annual review reminder is always part of the process. And then we work with the same reps to make sure that they're on the same page. If the client's looking to shop, we see it every day, right? There's new insurtechs that start every day. If there's new platforms that come out in the next year that shopper wants to take a look at, that's part of the process in a year. But there's also an alert that goes out to the broker. We keep track of when that X date is. We know when that's coming up. And so we want to make sure every year we make that connection point with the user, unless they say, hey, leave me alone type of a thing. Every year, annual reviews is just part of what we want to do. It's an expectation we have with the brokers that we bring into the network. I think the worst thing that can happen is somebody comes in, buys a policy, and it sits there for 5 years. No one takes a look at it. One of the success stories we have is my best friend's mom had that happen to her. She overpaid by $500-$600 every single year for 5 years. We went in, we took a look at it. The broker that she communicated had access to the same carriers as the broker she was with at the time. Just didn't take a look at it, didn't do the review, and ultimately, they lost that business because of that annual review. So each year we want to try to focus on that reminder, both on the agent level, broker level, and on the consumer level. So that's our touch point. I just think sometimes if you do too many more touch points from that end of things, like, constantly updating your insurance prices and things like that, maybe there's a consumer fit for that, but I don't come across that consumer that's like, hey, send me real-time data on my insurance prices. Every year, honestly, every year and a half, 2 years really is something that I feel like people can feel comfortable about. I do it once a year, but I also love my agent. He's a great guy, so I like going and seeing him. So I certainly want to put that out there when I'm like, oh yeah, I go every year, but it's fun for me to see him as well. So we are not encouraging people to day trade their insurance policies. Just a few touch points are probably all that you need, but okay. Well, that's interesting. So I'm curious as to when the idea was starting to germinate that you wanted to do something like this. Walk me through the steps that you took to actually get this up. Is it as simple as getting a website up, or to me, because of what you're trying to accomplish here, there was probably a lot of initial marketing research that you had to do to kind of test out some of it and to see whether this would work. Absolutely. And so I knew I wanted to get into marketing and insurance. I liked it. I enjoyed it. I wrote a post the other day about the question as to whether or not if you work in marketing or you work in some other element of insurance, do you have to have a reason why you're not a broker or why you're not an agent? Because I think that's always something that comes up. And my answer to that, it was pretty straightforward. I just enjoy that consumer interaction. I enjoy that point of, hey, I don't really like insurance, or, hey, I think I'm paying too much. I like to be involved in that conversation almost as a calming voice, and then be able to transfer that conversation to someone that's, policy focused, coverage focused, that understands how to put a policy and a plan together for a client. I really enjoyed the conversation. I didn't really enjoy the back end, again, recommendation part of it. And so for me, yeah, I knew I wanted to get into the marketing element. Went out, had a handful of really close insurance buddies. Everybody kind of pooled together and said, hey, Pat's got some startup experience already. He's got some digital experience already. If I'm able to use you all as a sounding board, a couple captive agents and a handful of brokers, if we can use you as a sounding board, I think we can really tune in and continue to be of value to the agents and the brokers, the folks that in the long run would pay us and create our revenue model. So, that element was created, and that took some time. It's hard to, especially with insurance professionals, it's really hard to get any of their time, especially outside of their regular hours, if you will, because they really don't have any. It's always going. So that initial combination of just a lot of really good minds, a handful of really good agents, was the core of, hey, here's how, agents need to function. Here's their stress point. The next thing for me, and I spent about a year, and I still do it, but I answered almost 250 questions, completely consumer-driven questions on Quora. And it was always insurance. It was everything from, I was in a claim, what should I do, to what's the best price for this type of car for a 21-year-old driver. So I went through, 200 plus questions, and ultimately my big drawback on all of it was like, hey, I can tell somebody to go to a broker because they've got kind of an intricate question, or, you know what, like Metromile or Clear Cover, something like that's a good fit. You're an urban driver. It sounds like you don't, drive a lot. Maybe take a look at Metromile. Those types of things were recommendations that were just easy to say, right? I'm typing up a little bit of what equates to a blog post answer. And it hit me like, hey, this isn't really what they're asking. This isn't what they're looking for. They want actionable answers, right? If I'm 21 years old and I drive this car, make and model, what expectation should I have for insurance? That person's just browsing. They're not asking to talk to an agent. So I went out and connected with a Zebra, who has an awesome comparison tool, in my opinion, where that individual question, that individual person asking that question, I can now respond and say, hey, look, I don't have a chart in my head that I can come up with those numbers on, but here, if you go to this widget, you can answer your question, right? So inside of those 200 plus questions is really where I said Hedge Quote needs to help people to make a quick actionable route, I should say, to the information they're looking for. Does somebody that just needs a renter's insurance policy, they don't have a car, they're just moving into their first place, do they really need to spend 40 minutes, 30 minutes on the phone, with a broker, searching for a broker? Or is Jetty something that might be a better fit for them? Are they already on their phone? So plug in something like Jetty into the equation, saves time, and really it does connect people a lot of times with a tool that they're more comfortable interacting with. So it's always evolving. And I always say this, Hedge Quote should be about as good as the insurance industry as a whole. We should always strive to have all the different players, all the different options, understand who their clients, who their, ideal client is, who they can help the most. And when that person comes through Hedge Quote, connecting them to that. So it's always evolving, but the idea behind it was, hey, you don't always need to spend an hour and a half calling up 3 or 4 agents and brokers every time you need insurance. If you come to Hedge Quote, I can tell you based on what you're looking, here's probably the 2 or 3 people that make the most sense to talk to. And I think you can save people a lot of time. And so that's, again, building that stuff, coming up conceptually with all that stuff came from Quora. And building the website in a lot of ways, that was pretty much just the part of it that I struggled with, but I wanted to do it. I wanted to understand what that process looked like. So again, if I was somebody developing a side gig, what did that look like when they had to develop their platform? And just to understand again where the people that would use our platform were coming from, that was the challenge in developing it. And I think the ongoing challenge is, hey, as things continue to move so fast, how do I react to that? How does Hedge Quote continue to find the best players in the industry, the best brokers in different markets and things like that? So a good think tank of agents kind of help me to make sure that we're doing the things that are necessary to help agents help other shoppers. The 200 plus questions really gave me the concept of, hey, this has to be more than actionable. If you tell somebody to search for a broker on Google, you really haven't helped that person at all. If you say, look, this is somebody in New York that's just a really good agent or a really good broker, you should connect with them. You save that person a ton of time and a ton of rabbit holes that really, I think, could just maybe put them off and say, you know what, I'm not going to deal with it. And then they don't address the problems they have with their policy. So I did, a lot of the groundwork, and then obviously just had a support team and a lot of helpful people around me that helped me to and continue to help me understand the dynamics of brokers, the dynamics of shoppers. And then, I try to put out a lot of InsurTech lists if I can, InsurTechs to watch, especially in the US, because I want to see that feedback. I want to see what people think about these products. People like you, I really am always looking at what you think about a product, understanding what's new, what's not worth it, what really isn't going to help a shopper. All those types of things are kind of the ongoing development piece that I try to focus on more or less, but it's never ending. And I'm sure you know that. And most of the people you talk to, it's really never ending. And it's always one little inspiration after another.
And we'll get right back to this podcast right after a short message from our sponsor. I'm here with Chris Stanley, founder of IAPath. So Chris, what is IAPath and why did you start it?
Well, Nick, I started IAPath because a friend of mine wanted to get into the industry and couldn't find anything online about how to become an independent auto damage appraiser. And I just thought that was crazy and kind of unacceptable. So I decided I wanted to make it easier to be and become an independent appraiser and adjuster by providing people with information, inspiration, and eventually certification. From the beginning, it was important to me that I'd be a real human being that people could connect to. Yet, I dreamed it would become an organization that was big enough to make a difference. So what is IAPath? We're here to give people a clear-cut path to becoming an IA. Thus the name IAPath.
IAPath, unlocking your adjusting superpowers. Go to iapath.com.
Understanding what's new, what's not worth it, what really isn't going to help a shopper. All those types of things are kind of the ongoing development piece that I try to focus on more or less, but it's never ending. And I'm sure you know that. And most of the people you talk to, it's really never ending. And it's always one little inspiration after another.
Yeah. So you need to have thorough research on the entire market and every new entrant that comes in. So through Hedge Quote, could you place someone in like a lemonade type product?
Not in a lemonade type product, but personally, I've used Jetty. We've had internal Hedge Quote contributors that have used Jetty and have been extremely happy with that platform. So I can't speak to the whether or not how lemonade works for anybody, for shoppers, but I think Jetty is a very comparable product on just flat out on the product level. But then I think their sign up process is solid. It's very quick. And so that's just, it's who we partnered with on that kind of on-demand renters as an example. So it's always about being on top of it, but a lot of times it's staying on top of brokers too. And really making sure that who you think that broker is actually what the client's going to experience. And so a lot of things online that you can go through to just kind of follow, along as this, is this agent creating a lot of content, this broker creating a lot of content that's, geared towards consumers, or is this something that's kind of giving you an internal look at how they actually feel about the numbers game that's insurance. So staying on top of kind of just the industry as a whole, which is impossible, but yeah, that's a big part of making sure that engine piece is, always as dynamic as possible.
So what lines of business can you operate under right now?
So we do, at any point in the markets that we're live in. So we do right now, we can do Illinois, New York, North Carolina, Virginia, and coming very soon, hopefully Massachusetts. So in those marketplaces, we have access to basically any product line through the brokers that we have there. We also have strategic partnerships with Jetty for, the on-demand renters. CoverWallet is just a phenomenal business platform. They're a partner. Hippo is another partner. Metromile is another partner that we have. So, the lines of business, not only are they auto, home renters, all that type of stuff that you can access through a broker. You've also got those specialty lines where, like I mentioned earlier, if you're a low mileage person, you're an urban driver, something like that, Metromile, take a look at it. Hippo, if you need no hassle, you just want to take a look at what your house is going to cost you. You're not looking to put your phone and your email down. They're kind of a no hassle way to do that type of stuff. So very traditional in the product lines. You're not going to find anything unique, but you're certainly not going to find a lack for any of the product lines either.
Yeah, you came from a life background. Are you going to dabble in that as well?
I want to, and I really, I want to. And life insurance is something that, yeah, like you mentioned, it holds a special spot, kind of in my heart, so to speak. But I was just talking to somebody that I really respect a lot, Stephen Goldstein, and I was talking to him on the phone, and he got to talking about the education piece, and he has a life background too, and it kind of hit me, and we got to talking that life insurance, especially when I started, had so many really good networking pieces to it, so many really solid ways that they went about getting referrals. And so whether or not I kind of get back into the life product is hopefully soon. We really want to find that strategic partner, and I've reached out to a couple of them that I really respect. So hopefully we can put something together for them. But the broader point was just, I think life insurance has a lot of lessons on a networking and on a referral level that the digital movement can kind of take a look at and say, hey, if we can automate certain things, that's important, but where can we still have that human to human connection? And life insurance agents, Northwestern Mutual is where I got my start. And I wish they sold tickets to the annual meeting, because listening to those individuals from Northwestern Mutual, especially when you hear those people talk, it's not just inspiring, but you get that glimpse into, wow, like this is an advisor. This is somebody that really gets it. So the life piece would be great. You're drawing on my emotions a little bit. I'm getting real passionate talking about everybody that got me going. But yeah, I think the online life insurance movement for me, the only hope I have for it is that more people get insured. Like we have to root, even if they don't buy a policy from us, like even if they don't get as much as we think they should, they being the consumer, as long as they just get into a policy, right? Like 0 is the worst number to have. Like if they have a need, as long as they get into something, that's great. And I think that a lot of these digital platforms, and I hope, that's the hope, is that they can get that person that's just not ready to have a full blown, hour-long fact finder about every aspect of their life, and then, buy a life insurance policy. Maybe they're just ready to say, hey, 5 times, 10 times my income, and feel comfortable with the digital platform. If that's what comes out of it, like that's even enough, because there's just nothing on a personal level. I've dealt with it, and on a professional level, I've dealt with it as well. There's just nothing like even a good sized death benefit check is still terrifying, because you just don't know if it's enough. So I'm rooting for those platforms. I hope that I can integrate those platforms like we have some of the other bigger insurtech players, and that's all part of the development, if you will, of the engine.
Yeah, so I can sense the emotion building up. So let me ratchet that down and ask you: are you going to get into commercial P&C? So the opposite side of emotion.
Yeah. No, I really think and I felt this way for a long time. CoverWallet was one of the first partners that I reached out to, and the group that's over there, they do a good job. They take care of people. And so, if somebody needed a referral to a broker and they needed that and felt like that was the way to go, I think in the long run, hopefully we have a network that can facilitate that or at least make that referral. But honestly, I feel very comfortable with where I'm at with CoverWallet and really the progress and the direction they're going. It doesn't make me feel like there's a big lack for that commercial PMC right now. There's always access to a licensed professional if you need it. So I'm terrible at commercial. When I told you I was a commercial broker earlier, like I should have just been like, and I was terrible. But since we'll circle around to it now, like, no, those two reasons primarily CoverWallet's quality. But yeah, I'm a terrible commercial broker. So I would probably have to have somebody come on and cover my back, I guess, for lack of a better explanation.
CoverWallet, cover back. Got it. Got it. No, that makes sense. So where are you headed? Like, how do you're going to be expanding into other geographies. Great. New Hampshire, when are you coming to New Hampshire so I can test this thing out?
Soon.
Good.
Soon. We have to vet people. And I always say the one thing that annoys people, I don't really call us an insure tech. I don't know what we are. We've got some interesting dynamics to us, but the one thing that bothers the tech community about, I think, the way that I've gone about things is that I have more of the insurance industry patience when it comes to the markets we go into. And where we're headed, I think, is a perfect segue into kind of that answer. The big reason I built Hedge Quote in the first place was certainly about having a great shopping experience, a platform that said, look, you don't have to go through all these kind of hoops to find the right policy or to just know what it's going to cost you to get that policy, right? Like, you should be able to just go through us and we'll point you in the right direction, save you a bunch of time. Like, certainly wanted to build that engine and continue to maintain that. But the goal and really the passionate piece that I want to continue to develop and what I set out to do was to create an insurance marketing side gig, side hustle, side gig, call it what you want, but to create an environment that it took somebody that had an online presence, and it didn't have to be an insurance presence, right? It could be somebody that blogs about anything. It could just be an individual that had a really good shopping experience with Hedge Quote, but empowering those people to have side businesses, to create income inside of the insurance industry. And, again, back to what I talked about earlier, with that inspiration of, hey, that telemarketer that was part-time, that was unlicensed, they were so valuable. They pushed so much business into the agency, and, the phone's kind of disappearing a little bit. It's kind of a fact. And I think what I'm trying to do is transition that and say, hey, look, those people are still there. They still have that same ambition. They'll want to work part-time. They'll talk to their friends about insurance, but now they're on Facebook. Now they're on Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, right? They're on those mediums now. And so they already have the phone. They don't need to come into the office. They don't need to sit down in front of the data anymore because they have their own networks and they have their own outlets that they can reach out to people. So when I was developing Hedge Quote the entire time, the point was to be able to say, hey, look, I was building an insurance comparison website during the day, and I was helping friends and family take a look at their insurance at night. And you know what? It would be a pretty decent income, if I wasn't R&D in it. If it was something that I was doing as a side gig, it would be easy. Insurance pays some of the highest commissions when it comes to not commissions, but cost per click. You take a look at what it costs for just one homeowner's click on a Google AdWords. It's kind of like, okay, well, yeah, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that at an agency level, right? So being able to create that affiliate network and empower those people, equip those people with the tools that they needed to go out and create a side business that's the ultimate goal. I've thrown a number out there, maybe it's arbitrary, but, creating 10,000 new jobs in the insurance industry as a side gig for marketing, right? Something that people can just go into. They can utilize their own special talents, their own network, and have something tangible and helpful that they can go out to their network and I guess push, if you will, but really just provide that outlet. So that's where we're going. I mean, that's the big focus, is how do we take our search engine? How do I take my experiences kind of as the first affiliate for Hedge Quote? How do I take those experiences, walk people through what that looks like so that they can earn that same income, and then simplify it, right? So that they're not having to sign up with 7 different partners and worry about, checks from 15 different brokers all over the country, right? Hedge Quote can take that all under the affiliate tool that we utilize right now. We can track, we can make payments, and so that an affiliate, if they decide that they want to do this, if this is something they can get passionate about, they only have to put up a link to Hedge Quote, and they only have to access one dashboard to monitor their entire business. And ultimately, they might have users that go straight to, just straight to a broker and get taken care of and access that compensation model. In the long run, obviously, hopefully they'll have access to the different partners that we have, and we can make that easier for our partners in the long run as well, right? So if you're an affiliate, you get access to a dozen plus different compensation avenues, different streams, I should say. And if you're an insurtech, you're an insurance broker, you're an insurance brand, you can get access to, numerous handful of affiliates without actually having to manage them individually. It's, especially for the startups, it's very difficult for them to add that piece of it to their equation. So hopefully, very soon and ongoing, we can be a resource in that kind of affiliate management realm, if you will.
Yeah, we interviewed Robin Smith from WeGoLook, who's doing you taking advantage, building a model around the gig economy for all kinds of inspection services. And so really in what Hedge Quote is the same sort of model, except for marketing and lead generation on the distribution side of insurance.
And and that's awesome. That comparison I think is great. And that's, WeGoLook is one of those teams that's on every list that I put up, because they're just that good at what they do. But I think they recognize the broadness of the industry itself, and they're creating jobs that really, I guess, didn't necessarily exist. And so there's inspiration and there's motivation that comes from when, seeing a group like that isn't really having that same narrative that, hey, unfortunately, with this platform, you're probably going to see such and such departments become eliminated. Whether that happens or not, I think is probably, debatable. But, having that alternate narrative where it's like, hey, these are groups that are kind of taking advantage of the way the broader economy is growing. And they're trying to utilize some of those outside of the box tools like influencer marketing, outside contract work, that type of stuff. They're trying to bring those models that are working for so many different industries. They're trying to bring those into the insurance realm and trying to just make that work. Say, hey, look, it works for everybody else, and here's how it can work for us. So, yeah, recognizing that opportunity was early on. I mean, I knew that's where I wanted to take things. The advisory board that I worked with said, hey, it was always kind of interesting when we built the digital shopper model, because we always just assumed people were like, well, like you, right? Like, okay, but it's not really that much, right? The big plan and the big goal has always been to create those jobs, to form a new way that people can kind of enter the insurance industry. That, like you mentioned earlier, it's rough when you say, hey, just sit down in this chair for the next 20 years and you'll be a successful insurance broker. Like a 22-year-old, 23-year-old, like I would freak out about like that and be like, yeah, that sounds scary, right? Like, I feel like they can't just go in and telemarket anymore for an agency to kind of get a feel for that agency. So, as it would relate to more of an insurance nerds type of topic, like, I really think this is a great way for people to learn the industry, to see kind of the dynamics, the consumer friction points. And I do believe that there probably will be some really cool success stories of people that said, I had no insurance experience. I went through the Hedge Quote process. I became an affiliate. And ultimately, I found a career in insurance. Certainly maybe pie in the sky hopes for a small startup, but at the same stretch, like, that's where that passion comes from. That's where that vision ends up being, is empowering people to have really cool side gigs. Like, hey, pay for a Disney trip. all that type of stuff, but like truly deliver on it, right? Not after you invest $750 into this platform and do such and such. Like, no, if when you sign up, if you deliver on the quote, on the lead, on the click, whatever that is, like you're already making money and going into the, positive side of things. Those types of things, maybe those are more just like personal experiences for me that, I want to avoid and not be involved in as I build a company. But yeah, the exciting part, the piece that I really want to find help, I want to find partners to work with, is to expand that and create those types of jobs and ultimately, connect people to the right insurance policy so that we stop having these just terrible stories, I didn't carry this coverage or I missed this coverage. Like, the more conversations people will have with licensed professionals, the more interaction they have with, learning resources that are based on insurance, I really believe the safer everybody ends up being. And you kind of have to hope for that if you're in insurance. I think you have to, no matter who you are, have to have that desire to just, maybe people get a little safer because of what you do. Maybe a few more people have a conversation that they wouldn't have already had. And then, like I said, I just hope one day that there's thousands and thousands of people that say, hey, I'm glad you guys did this because, I was able to accomplish this goal, or I was, able to do this with my family. So yeah, the core of everything I've done is still to create those jobs, to have that affiliate network be something that's real and valuable to a lot of people.
No, that's really interesting. Did you require any outside funding to build this up?
We brought in a little bit. So everybody threw in, the advisory board I mentioned earlier threw in a little bit. And then basically I just shouldered everything from, the development piece of it and then the ongoing funding. So totally bootstrapped, operation. And the next big thing is to try to find some of those, I think, partners that know that how to scale, partners that understand that affiliate network even, broader than we do. So we brought in a little bit of funding and it was something that helped a lot, got us to where we're at. And I think that, bootstrapping is something we've been really good at. And we'd always be open to a case of here's how, a partnership with such and such company would help. But I think my feelings on funding have always been, more directed at who is going to be part of the team and how that money gets spent through that team. And so being in Chicago, I'm fortunate that I am around a lot of, I guess, ecosystem builders, right? I've always thought that the people that, especially the early on people I grew upon, they just created this new marketplace. And a lot of those people are still in Chicago. And I wouldn't say idle's the right word, but, certainly people that I've looked up to and said, hey, when it comes time to build my marketplace, these are the people I want to get involved in. So from day one, the outside funding that's came in has been minimal, certainly, but at the same stretch, the value of the people has been enormous. And so hopefully I can continue that trend, as we move forward. And I'm always open to partners, right? I just listed off all the different partnerships that we have just on our shopping tool. But when people are looking to make the industry better, I'm looking to support those people. I'm looking to give them shout outs, buy their books, Insuring Tomorrow, that type of stuff is important. It's important not just to read it, but it's important to support that type of stuff. I was on a phone call today and the agent said to me, the broker said to me, he's like, you should have just led with the fact that you're a bootstrap startup. Like, I'm totally on board. I want to work on this type of stuff. And, that's a pretty cool feeling to have in an industry that I think you mentioned it in the agenda. Like, the pushback from the industry is always the same. You're not going to change anything. The way we're doing it now is good enough. And there's just always going to be just the nitpick of what you do. Like that, whether you own an agency in, Naperville, Illinois, or whether you're trying to operate an insurtech in Silicon Valley, like, people are just going to nitpick everything you're doing. So, just trying to focus on the core group that's around you, trying to make sure that the people that you're working with deliver that value. That's where I want to focus my attention.
Yeah. It's certain Hedge Quote is certainly a lot different than what I expected. So I'll make sure all of the important information's on the show notes. So I think we did a good job of trying to summarize what Hedge Quote does, and I would like to see alternatives and other marketing opportunities. And it's just fantastic that you're looking at this from a different prism. And of course, with the talent gap, we have a younger audience that's coming into the space, and a gig like structure, payment structure, work structure just really is magnetic to them because they like the freedom, they like the flexibility and all of that. So definitely an interesting model. And for the sake of time and to respect your time, I want to transition over to the personal side, so we get to know a little bit more about yourself. And I always ask this of all the guests that come on. What tools or techniques do you use to stay productive?
I use Twitter, okay, and I'm interested to see if anybody gives me any feedback with this. But I go on Twitter a lot to remain productive, and maybe that sounds totally crazy, but again, I kind of think I work in the digital space, so it makes sense. But when I go online and I always think of it's a little goofy, right? But I think of that scene in Wreck-It Ralph where they're all in the lobby and then they go out into their different games, right? I kind of look at Twitter the same way, where I go online and, the people at Coverage are already online, pumping something new out, pointing something out that helps me on a daily basis to get my gear going in the right direction. Just finding those different people. Ask Kodiak literally has, I think, the best InsurTech Twitter account. Maybe I'm being too fanboyish with that, but like, they're hilarious, and
we love them.
Interacting with those people, right? I mean, and interacting with those types of people on Twitter, for somebody like me that's very solo on a daily basis with what I'm doing, it's like having that conversation. And fortunately for the people that I go back and forth with they're impressive. If nothing else, they've got their finger on the pulse of insurance and InsurTech. And so, yeah, Marty Agather is probably my favorite person to just kind of follow. He's on Quora a lot with me. He answers some really cool questions. And then, anytime he's on Agency Nation, I want to tune in. So, those types of people, interacting with them on Twitter, interacting with them on Quora, not really a lot on Facebook or Instagram as far as just interacting with anybody. That gets me going. It helps me to see where people are thinking. And it's just the random content that kind of like, okay, hey, here's something to think about today, or, here's a company we need to add to the list, or a broker we need to add to the list, to just kind of follow along and see what they're all about. So yeah, just getting online and talking to those types of people, it makes a big difference for me. So, maybe not like the technology tool that a lot of people maybe come up with, but for me, yeah, that interaction's great. And like I said, kind of going into that hallway where everybody's at that's what it feels like in a lot of ways. When you wake up, it's my friends in InsurTech, as I say. So
yeah, Twitter's changed. My perception of it has changed as well. I don't like Facebook. Like, it just seems like a lot of noise and mostly unproductive. Twitter, though, is almost like the perfect bite size of information that you can get, and if you connect it to the right people, you mentioned Ask Kodiak, right? So if you connect it to the right people and they throw a question out there or whatever, it stimulates a lot of interesting conversation, a lot of witty conversation that can occur, that can get your mind focused on in a certain direction, or perhaps like you, it could be inspiring. It's just like, oh, this pumps me up and gets me going. My perception of it has changed. At first, I thought, oh, Twitter's just all noise, but then once you follow the right people and it gets organized, it is a good way to sort of especially keep your finger on the pulse of what's actually happening now. So I don't think that's a poor product for productivity at all. I happen to be on there a lot as well, so that's not bad. What about books? Have there been any books that have you found influential in your business or personal lives?
Yeah, definitely. And I try to share that on my LinkedIn account as much as I can. It more to hopefully stimulate people recommending books for me than to say, hey, this is what I just got done reading. But
that's exactly why I do this. There's so many books out there, and it's like this is for one thing, maybe for the audience, but mostly for me, it's a shortcut. If there's a bunch of people all recommending the same books that I haven't read, then I should be reading those books.
Exactly. So that was, obviously I listened to the podcast. And so for me, that was probably the first thing I was like, all right, what book am I going to talk about here? There's so many that I try to read as much as possible. And, I go back to when I was in college and I just finished playing baseball and was pretty lost. Being an athlete that ultimately wasn't playing anymore and was just at school, and being an insurance agent, I was just kind of learning a whole new kind of lifestyle, so to speak. And I read Drew Rosenhaus, the NFL agent, wrote a book called Shark Never Sleeps. And, there's a lot of real bold stuff in there, a lot of bravado that goes on that, certainly doesn't match up with my personality. But the big lesson that I took away, and I read it twice when I was in college, so it had a big impact on me early on, was just that step-by-step process that he and his brother had to follow. It wasn't just, hey, we hung out with a couple of NFL players that really liked us, and so we became agents. This was something that he decided to do with his brother when they were still teenagers. And it's something that, they both worked on through college to get JDs and CPAs so that they had the right tools. It wasn't just, hey, we're buddies with these guys. They had the right tools. And so at an early age, as I was just getting into insurance and building my first insurance book of business, it was really impactful to read that book and to see that there wasn't a shortcut. If you're looking for that shortcut, it's, I don't even want to get into an analogy. It's just not something I do. And from an early age, when I read that book a couple of times, it had a pretty big impact on me. And then right about that exact same time, I was given a book by who I think still the best life insurance agent, insurance advisor I've ever met in my life, is a guy named Keith Wagner. He's in Los Angeles. I shadowed him for one day, and it was the most impactful day of my life. The urgency that he brought to his day, the consistency that he brought to his day, is something that 15 years later, I still feel it. I can still picture, I can feel that emotion because of how authentic it was. And when I got home from my trip to LA, so I flew out there, he, allowed me to shadow him, which was unreal. He was, the number one agent at Northwestern Mutual at the time, and I was shadowing him. It's pretty surreal, but at the same stretch, I get home and he sent me a book called Rhinoceros Success, and just said, read through this. I started at a young age in insurance. It was tough, but it was worth it. And that book is very short. It's almost cartoonish, but it's awesome. So between A Shark Never Sleeps and Rhinoceros Success, as much the people, that introduced me to those books as anything, were just really, really impactful on especially the early part of my development, the early part of my career. And, obviously grateful to Keith for sending that book to me, and, being able to read that Drew Rosenhaus book and take away some of the details I did was something that I think about every day. So certainly those two books. And I mean, who gets what and why is a brand new book. And I think that's probably, when you think about developing marketplaces and things like that, it's a pretty good read. So 3 books I thought about, impactful ones, and then one modern one, hopefully.
Well, this is why I do it. I can really feel your passion towards these books. So as you were talking and I put you on mute, I went on Amazon and I've never seen this book. But if Pat feels that strongly about it, I think I might have to at least get the Kindle edition and take a look at it. So that's why I do this. Thank you.
Absolutely. No, it's my
awesome.
favorite part too. Like it's like totally my cheat sheet too. So I'm on board with what.
Yeah,
I love it too.
I'm working with Ryan Deeds, who's like our IT guy almost at Insurance Nerds. We really lean on him to make sure the site's up and running. And I told him, like, I'm getting all these recommendations for books. Like we should put them in a database and let people search through, and with links to Amazon, and really have a compiled list that folks that are listening to this show, they can just go to the site and then figure out who recommended what and how many were recommended and what's on the top of the list. We can have our own like little Amazon recommendations. So this is just incredibly invaluable to have. This is such a shortcut,
Absolutely. Well, Ryan Deeds is awesome. So I'm sure if you put him on that, it'll get done quick,
Yeah.
and it'll probably be more awesome than anybody ever imagined.
Yeah. I mean, talk about someone who's so selfless, is just, constantly there to help and doesn't really ask for anything. It's like you couldn't ask for more. It's just a wonderful resource and very knowledgeable too. So just having him on our Slack channel, for anyone that's listening, you're invited. You come to our Slack channel. We have great conversations, and Ryan's always there as a tech person who's very much interested in insurance and brings up like really interesting insights about insurance and things that he's seen, and his knowledge and wisdom coming from the tech side is just fantastic. So I'm glad you know him. And we're in such a small world, it's like everyone kind of knows each other. So that's fantastic. I learned a lot. I'm it's not too often that someone comes on that brings something to the table that's really, really new, so new that I'm just like, what is this? Oh, this isn't going to work. But, oh, wait, that's interesting. Ooh, that could go in an interesting direction. And then even with the conversation, I kept learning more. So for anyone that's listening, it's Hedge Quote. I will have all of the information on the show notes. Pat, if people wanted to reach out to you, how would they find you?
Yeah, so obviously you can come to hedgequote.com and just use the contact us if you want to get a hold of me, or direct email patrick@hedgequote.com. Twitter, I'm at HedgeQuote, and LinkedIn. I spend a lot of time on those platforms, really, networking with people, and I'm always looking for feedback, and I'm always looking for people that are, just interested. Not saying that insurance is broken, but people that are saying it can get better, and so those are the people I'm always the most excited to talk to. But those are the two easiest ways. There's three easiest ways to get a hold of me, and the opportunity to kind of talk about all this stuff has been pretty great. Like I said, it's the one thing I always tell people, I have a tech background. I consider myself a millennial, but I started selling insurance 15 years ago, and I had a shoebox full of postcards. So, when it comes down to somebody that just understands the dynamics of the insurance industry and, has a big respect for what tech can do to it, I just hope I'm a resource for people in the long run. And, if nothing else, I hope I'm supportive. I'm a positive voice in the insurtech world. Like you said, it's small. And, when people are doing stuff like what you and insurance nerds are doing, and what so many other people are doing, just hope I remain that positive voice, and look to advance things for the right reasons, not to hold anything back.
I can't say it any better than that. My guest this week has been Pat West of Hedge Quote. Pat, thanks again.
Thank you so much.